Hello, my name is Theresa Lola and I'm a poet. By the end of this session, you will have written your own poem as well, and I hope that you're as excited as I am. So I'm currently in Hackney Museum. Hackney Museum is a place that tells the stories of people that live in Hackney and those who have moved from different parts of the world to be in Hackney. There's currently an exhibition on at the moment, and the exhibition is titled Being African in Hackney. And the exhibition tells the stories of people who've moved from Africa to Hackney. And this exhibition is about the objects that they brought with them, the communities that they formed when they came here, and the personal stories of how they felt when they moved here. And the workshop today is going to be inspired by this exhibition. So what you'll need is your pen, your pencils, your paper, and your activity pack. Africa is a continent made up of over 50 countries. And you're probably thinking, over 50? Yes. So I'd like to see just how many you know. I want you with the person next to you, get your pen and paper. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, I want you to see how many countries in Africa you can come up with. I hope you had fun doing that. So all the countries in Africa are all different. They have different cultures, different languages, different customs, and are unique in their different ways. And I hope that through this session, you get to be inspired by these different countries in Africa and the stories of people who moved from them to Hackney. Now we're going to look at some of the objects in the exhibition. Some people from Africa, when coming to Hackney, brought objects with them. And people bring objects for different reasons. Some to remind them of their culture, to remind them of home, to remind them of their country. And now what I want you to do is to turn to your activity pack, and you're going to see a section of objects from the exhibition. Now I'm going to give you a task. With the person next to you or with your group, I want you to look through the objects in the pack, and I want you to select an object that you connect with the most, one that you're curious about. And I want you to write down 5 things about this object, so 5 descriptions, and I want you to be as creative as possible. I'm going to give you an example of my own list that I wrote down. So when looking through the objects in the exhibition, one of the objects that I connected with was the can of chili peppers. So I'm going to read you my own description of the can. It's the can of chili peppers. It is cream colored with bold red text on it in different sizes that reads Nigerian chili peppers. The top and bottom are silver, round as a frisbee. If I carried it, I think it would feel smooth on my hand. It wouldn't be heavy, as there is no food inside it. It might be light as an empty plastic bottle. It reminds me of the can of plum tomatoes my sister uses to make stew on the weekends. So now I'm looking forward to hearing yours. I hope you enjoyed looking through the object and writing down its descriptions. Now we are going to write our first poem. And don't worry, all the descriptions that we wrote for the object are going to be useful for us when writing this poem. So what is this poem going to be about? What I want you to do individually is to imagine you are gifting this object to someone you know. So it could be a family member, it could be a friend. And I want you to imagine what they would love about the object. So how could they use the object? Why do you think the object could be important to them? So I'll give you an example of a short poem that I wrote. So I told you earlier that the object I picked was the can of chili peppers. So I've written something imagining I've given the can of chili peppers to my mother. I give my mother the can of chili peppers I found dangling in the park like an apple. And she receives it with hands stretched like a long smile. Out from the can trampolines a flurry of colourful memories. My mother pours the peppers into a blender like she used to, stirs it into a pot to make a soup. The open can sits on our work table, its silver lid like a shimmery mirror, showing us our joy. So I want you to have fun writing your own poem. See you in a bit. So this exhibition not only shows us the objects that people brought from Africa when they moved to Hackney, it also tells us about their personal stories. So it's all about those who moved from Africa to Hackney since the 1960s. That's about 60 years on. So you might have moved to a different place for different reasons. So whether you're moving schools, moving houses, moving countries. Now I want to ask the question, what are some of the reasons you can think of for people moving from Africa to Hackney? So I'll share with you a story in the exhibition that really moved me. It's the story of a man named Patrick Waza Ndauzai. He was living in Cameroon, but then he moved to London to be with someone he loved. So he left everything he had and he came to start a new life here. And I think it's so important for us to share our stories the way Patrick shared his story. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was living in Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria, lived there with my family, and then I moved to England when I was 13. And a lot of my poetry and what I write today is all about my dual identity, celebrating home, all the things I learned in Nigeria and all the things I learned here. And you today will also be writing poems about this exhibition, but also poems about yourself. And it's all about celebrating our unique identities. And we never know who we're going to inspire in the future. Now we're going to look at some of the stories of people who moved from Africa to Hackney. I want you to turn to your activity pack to the personal stories section. So museums don't just collect objects, they also collect memories. And one of the ways of doing so is by interviewing people. And you see in your activity pack key points and excerpts from these interviews. What I want you to do with the person next to you or in your group is to read through these stories carefully. And I want you to select the story that you connect with the most. So which person do you connect with in these packs? And once you've done so, I want you to underline key points or phrases from what they've said that stood out to you for whatever reason. It's time to write another poem, this time not on your own, but with a person next to you or with your group. So I want you to think about the person whose story that you picked, and I want you to write a poem addressed to them. So if you saw them today, what would you say to them? What questions would you ask them? I want you to think about all these things and channel it into a poem. There are many things that make up our identity, as you would have seen from the session today. It can be clothes, food, household items, music. And for our final poem, we're going to be writing a poem about you. Yes, so a poem about our identities. But don't fret, I'm going to give you a short example of what I mean. So this is a very short poem I wrote about my identity. So it goes, my name is Theresa. And in my Yoruba culture, we love soups, our bowls green as a ripe field in the summer, or sometimes red as the heart of a tomato. When we moved from Nigeria to London, we kept cooking the soups, drinking them, and letting home swim inside us. And that's it, you've written your final poem. So this session you've written not just one, not just two, but 3 poems, and I hope that you have enjoyed your time. So thank you very much, and remember, Hackney Museum is all about people, and you are part of that history.